How deep should I have my units? Is there any dangers to having thinly spread units? Are there any advantages to having deep unit formations? All questions I get asked, which I'm going to attempt to answer in this Total War tactic. Truth is, there's both advantages and disadvantages to thin or deep unit formations. It all really comes down to the situation and the units attacking you. The biggest factor affecting whether you need a thin or deep formation is actually a stat that is hidden from us, although it is pretty obvious that it's there and is basic physics. That hidden stat in question is unit mass, how heavy the unit is. The bigger it is, the harder it hits essentially, and the faster it travels, the more punch it'll have when it smashes into an enemy unit. Chariots, cavalry, monsters, dragons, all these things are high mass units that will hit hard upon charging into an enemy. The resistance that's presented from the unit that's been charged into will determine how the impact plays out. This will of course come down to the depth of your unit formation. So quite simply, a deep box-like formation like this will provide plenty of resistance when that massive large unit comes crashing into them, and the entire unit won't be smashed all over the place, apart from the poor fellas at the front. If your unit is in a thin formation like this, then you'll find that the entire unit may get smashed back and their formation will be completely destroyed. Or said large unit will just charge straight through the unit and keep going to avoid damage. Allow me to illustrate this with an example. This thinly spread unit here is charged into by a stegodon and it's able to keep going through the unit because there isn't enough resistance there to stop it. And then we've got a medium depth unit which provides more resistance and stops the stegodon from charging completely straight through it. And then we've got a deep square formation which is really going to give the stegodon a hard time getting through it, allowing us time to do damage to it, to get some anti-large into it, to start shooting at it while it's stuck in place, tying it down, restricting its movement. These large high mass units are most dangerous when they have freedom. It's not easy to tie them down, but deep formations are a start. This is especially important for spearmen, who are usually there to stop cavalry and flanking units. If they get charged through by a cavalry because they're too thin, they're not really doing their job very well. So do consider what the role of each unit is, as not all units should be spread out the same. Now one thing I'm honestly not completely sure of is the mass of infantry units themselves. Because realistically, if a 250 pound orc ran and charged into a 120 pound war dancer, she's gonna go absolutely fucking flying. Which isn't exactly what happens in the game. But really, I don't think infantry mass matters too much. An orc or a war dancer, they're both gonna get smashed through by Kolek. So a generally good practice if you have those high mass units charging at you and you're in a thin formation, is to switch to a deeper box-like formation. This will provide you that extra resistance and absorb the charge a lot better. This is one of the key ways to try and stop chariots, as they like to go through units and keep moving. This will of course though provide a burden on your micromanagement. Wide thinly spread formations do have their own advantage though. The units being a lot wider means they cover a lot more ground, making it harder for the enemy to flank and get behind you. So if you're met with a front line of a similar size, you'll be able to match up and fight to the death. And this is one of the most common formations you'll see when fighting other players online. If we have the same situation approaching us and we go for the box formation, you'll find that your front line won't be able to engage all the units that are coming at you, and you'll be in danger of being flanked. Of course it won't be as straightforward as this example, as there'll be other units in the way, but you get the idea. This deep square box-like formation is of little use against infantry. So typically, the best rule to follow is that thin lines are best against infantry, and deep formations are best against high mass units. As a basic example of how you could employ this, a deep unit of spearmen on the flank will protect against cavalry monsters coming around the sides. I've got my frontline white lines spread out as far as they'll go, and at the other end of that, another unit of spears in that deep formation. And in Total War Warhammer, it's not uncommon to have large units charging straight at your frontline infantry. So a unit of spears behind them in a deep formation can often be a good call just in case the enemy brings up any monsters to engage your infantry. Now one last point that you could argue is that a deep formation is going to last longer against infantry because not so many men are fighting and taking damage. This also means they're not doing as much damage though, so it kind of evens out. The same way that if you have a wide line, a lot more men will be fighting but a lot more men will be taking damage. To tell you the truth though, from what I've tested, the difference is really negligible. Deeper units don't really hold any longer than wider ones. So personally, I wouldn't worry about it. I hope you've enjoyed this, thanks for watching, see you in the future!